Far from Earth, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a small alien civilization called the Thalren lived peaceful lives. Their world was calm, filled with shining blue oceans and tall crystal towers that glowed under twin suns. They had no armies, no great weapons, and no reason to fight anyone. Their people believed that intelligence and kindness were the highest forms of strength. For centuries, they had built their future on science, trade, and diplomacy. But all of that changed when a ruthless species known as the Varkal arrived. The Varkal came without warning. Their ships blotted out the sky. Their weapons rained fire on cities that had never seen war before. The Thalren tried to communicate, to beg for peace, but the attackers wanted only domination. They burned entire regions, destroyed communication networks, and turned once bright cities into lifeless ruins. The Thalren had nothing that could stop them. Their defense ships were fragile compared to the massive war cruisers of the Varkal. Within a week, half of their homeworld was in flames. In underground shelters, the Thalren leaders gathered in panic. They tried sending calls for help to their nearby allies, but none responded. Everyone was afraid of the Varkal. No one wanted to anger them. It was as if the galaxy had turned its back on them. For the first time in their history, the Thalren faced true extinction. Families huddled together in the dark, listening to the rumble of explosions above. Parents whispered promises to their children that someone would come, even though they no longer believed it themselves. One scientist among them, tired and desperate, suggested something that others thought was madness. He proposed sending a wide-range distress signal, one that would travel beyond their sector and reach unknown regions of the galaxy. The council hesitated. No one knew who might hear it. It could reach predators, raiders, or species far more dangerous than the Varkal. But they had no other choice. If they didn't risk it, their people would be gone forever. And so, using the last working deep space transmitter, they crafted a message. A simple plea spoken in every major galactic language. The transmission was raw and emotional. It carried images of burning cities, injured civilians, and frightened children. The message didn't demand help. It begged for it. To whoever hears this, the voice said, we are dying. Please, we have no more time. The signal was released into the stars, spreading through the darkness like a spark of hope in a storm. Days passed. Then weeks. The Thalren began to lose faith. Their cities continued to fall, and the air above their world grew thick with smoke and radiation. But what they didn't know was that many light years away, the message had reached a place no one expected: human space. On a listening station orbiting Mars, technicians monitored incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Most signals were static or harmless space noise, but that night one of them stood out. It wasn't coded in any known trade frequency. When they played it back, the control room went silent. The sounds of the Thalren distress message filled the room. Crackling voices, cries for help, and flashes of images showing destroyed alien landscapes. The operators looked at each other, unsure what to do. They had heard strange things before, but never something like this. Within hours, the recording was sent to Earth's Defense Council. The highest-ranking officers and scientists gathered to analyze it. The message was confirmed as authentic. There was no doubt, an intelligent civilization was being wiped out. The room was filled with tension. Some officials argued that it wasn't humanity's problem. Earth had only recently recovered from its own struggles, wars, climate crises, and rebuilding efforts. They said humans shouldn't interfere in another species' conflict, but others felt differently. They remembered Earth's history, how many times humanity had stood on the edge of extinction and survived because someone chose to act. The message from the Thalren reminded them of what it meant to be human. It wasn't about territory or power. It was about compassion. In a late-night session that stretched for hours, the council debated the risks and consequences. Sending a fleet across unknown sectors could invite war, but letting an entire species die felt worse. Finally, the leader of the council stood and said, "If they called for help and we heard them, then it's no longer their problem alone. It's ours too." The room fell silent again, but this time with understanding. The order was issued to the Earth Expeditionary Command. Humanity would respond to the call. Across lunar shipyards and orbital platforms, preparations began immediately. Massive carriers were loaded with supplies, medical units, and defensive equipment. Scientists worked through the night to modify atmospheric modules so they could function on alien worlds. The mission was not just to fight, it was to save lives. Back on the Thalren world, the people were losing their last hope. They had retreated into mountain bunkers. Their skies were covered with smoke so thick it blocked out the light of their suns. Entire continents had gone silent. Only a few broadcasting towers remained, sending out the same desperate message again and again. "Please, someone help us." Then, one day, their scanners detected something strange in the outer orbit, a faint ripple in space, like a shadow crossing the stars. The technicians thought it was just another Varkal warship, but as they adjusted their sensors, their readings changed. The signal didn't match the Varkal. It was something completely different, something powerful, organized, and fast. The Thalren commanders hesitated. Could it be pirates? Another invader? They waited, hearts pounding. Moments later, their main receiver picked up a new transmission. It wasn't in their language at first, but then, through automatic translation, words appeared across their screens. "This is the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. Hold your position. Help is on the way." At first, no one believed it. The control room erupted in disbelief. Some thought it was a trick from the Varkal to lure them out. Others simply stared at the message, too shocked to speak. The humans, they had heard of them. The Deathworlders. Stories told across the galaxy described them as a brutal, unpredictable species, from a planet so dangerous that everything tried to kill them: storms, animals, even the ground itself. Other species spoke of them with a mix of awe and fear. But now that same species was promising to help. The Thalren leaders looked at each other, uncertain whether to trust the message. But deep down, they had nothing left to lose. They sent a reply. "If you can hear us, we welcome your aid. We are losing everything." Across the stars, aboard the lead ship HSS Resolute, human officers watched the incoming reply. Their fleet consisted of thousands of ships, battle cruisers, carriers, medical frigates, and escort vessels. They were ready for the unknown. Pilots sat in their cockpits, engineers checked engine calibrations, and medics prepared for alien physiology they had never encountered before. Every person on those ships knew that they were about to enter history. As the fleet lined up for hyperspace jump, the commander gave a final address. "We are not going as conquerors," he said quietly. "We are going as protectors. Those people out there need to know what humanity stands for." The engines lit up, casting long blue trails into the darkness. One by one, the ships disappeared into the void, vanishing faster than light. Back on the Thalren homeworld, the people gathered around their damaged communication screens. They had no idea what to expect, if the humans would truly come, or if it was just another false hope. But as the days passed, strange signals began appearing on their sensors again. Powerful energy bursts from deep space moving directly toward their system. And this time the readings were unmistakable. The Deathworlders were coming. They came not for conquest, not for fame, but because a voice had cried out for help across the stars, and humanity had answered. Inside the human command center on Earth, the air was heavy with tension. The distress call from the Thalren had changed everything. Humanity had heard many strange things from deep space before. Some were natural signals, others old automated probes. But this one was different. It wasn't just data or static. It was a voice filled with fear. It was a cry for help that no human could ignore. For days, the Council of Nations had held closed meetings. Every decision mattered now. Sending a fleet to another part of the galaxy wasn't simple. It meant risking lives, resources, and revealing humanity's true strength to unknown civilizations. Some argued they shouldn't interfere at all. Earth had just entered a fragile era of peace after decades of rebuilding. The planet was healing from its own dark years. Why should humans fight someone else's war? But others in the room spoke with emotion. They said that if humanity stayed silent while another civilization died, then they would become no better than those who destroyed them. The world had changed too much to go back to apathy. For the first time in centuries, all nations stood, united under one purpose: to reach out beyond their world, not for power but for compassion. In the orbiting defense stations, the news spread quickly among soldiers and engineers. The mission was unlike anything before. The humans called it Operation Solace. Thousands of volunteers came forward, space pilots who had fought in previous wars, doctors trained in xenobiology, engineers who could adapt human technology to unknown environments. Everyone wanted to be part of it. They weren't chasing glory. They wanted to be the reason another race survived. Preparation began immediately. Massive shipyards around the moon lit up like cities in the night. Mechanics worked non-stop to refit exploration cruisers into rescue vessels. Cargo bays were filled with humanitarian supplies: oxygen generators, water purifiers, portable shelters, and thousands of medical pods. Scientists worked tirelessly to decode Thalren biological data from the distress message, hoping to learn how to treat them if they found survivors. At the same time, military strategists studied the Varkal, the enemy attacking the Thalren. The Varkal were known from scattered records found in ancient alien archives. They were a warlike species that believed in domination through fear. They expanded by force, stripping planets of resources and enslaving weaker civilizations. For humanity, they represented everything Earth had fought to move beyond. The more humans learned, the stronger their resolve grew. They couldn't let history repeat itself, whether it was their own history or someone else's. Across the solar system, families watched news broadcasts showing the preparation of the fleet. Reporters spoke about the danger but also about the hope behind it. Children drew pictures of rockets leaving Earth to help the aliens. There was fear, yes, but there was also pride. Humanity was finally stepping beyond its borders, not to conquer but to protect. In one of the command hangars, the fleet's lead ship, the HSS Resolute, stood ready. It was a massive vessel built not just for war but for endurance. It carried both soldiers and scientists, medics and diplomats. Around it floated hundreds of smaller ships, each with a specific role: evacuation carriers, hospital cruisers, defense frigates, and research craft. It was a full representation of humanity's strength and heart combined. Before departure, the crew received a final briefing. The mission commander spoke quietly but firmly. "We are not going out there to show power," he said. "We are going out there to show who we truly are. The universe may know us as Deathworlders, but they will remember us as something else. Humans who came when others turned away." Those words echoed through the halls, through every ship, and into the hearts of the people on board. Many were nervous, but the purpose behind their mission made them strong. They weren't heading into a routine operation. They were heading into the unknown. The fleet's departure became a moment the entire world watched. Billions of people gathered around screens as the ships prepared to jump into hyperspace. The countdown began. The engines ignited, glowing blue against the darkness of space. When the signal was given, the ships vanished one by one into the void, leaving behind streaks of light like falling stars. Earth fell silent for a moment. Then across cities and towns, people cheered. Humanity had reached beyond fear. The journey through hyperspace was long and difficult. The fleet navigated through sectors no human had ever entered. Some areas were filled with unstable gravitational fields, others with radiation storms that interfered with navigation systems. Engineers worked non-stop to keep the ship stable. Pilots followed new coordinates provided by AI systems, while scientists studied the faint energy signatures that pointed toward the Thalren world. On board, the atmosphere was serious but calm. People trained daily, ran emergency drills, and prepared medical supplies. Holographic briefings showed the Thalren's planetary conditions: 2 suns, thin atmosphere, and high gravity in some regions. The medics studied alien anatomy, while translators worked on perfecting Thalren language algorithms. Every person wanted to be ready for the moment they arrived. During the long voyage, many of them thought about what kind of people the Thalren might be. Would they be friendly? Would they fear humans because of the stories told about Deathworlders? No one knew. But the message they had sent out, a voice trembling with desperation, reminded them that beneath differences of form or biology, fear and hope were universal. Back on the Thalren homeworld, time was running out. The Varkal had advanced deeper into the planet's last free regions. Whole continents were under their control. The skies burned with plasma storms caused by constant bombardment. Refugees crowded into mountain shelters, rationing air and water. Communication networks were almost gone. The Thalren leaders no longer expected anyone to come. Their distress beacon had been running for months without a single sign of help. But far above them, in deep space, the human fleet was getting close. When the Resolute entered the final approach, scanners began detecting debris fields, wrecked ships, and faint signals, evidence of massive battles. The silence of space was filled with invisible ghosts of war. The crew stared at their monitors, realizing they were stepping into a disaster zone. Then the first visual feed appeared on their main screen, the Thalren world. What they saw left them speechless. Half the planet glowed with fire. Massive craters dotted the surface. The other half lay in darkness, power grids destroyed, cities abandoned. It was a sight that stirred deep emotion in everyone watching. They didn't see aliens down there, they saw people. People who were terrified, people who had been left behind. Communication officers tried to reach the Thalren directly. Static filled the line, then faintly a weak signal broke through. A trembling voice spoke in a mix of alien and translated English. Who? Who is this? The human officer replied calmly, "This is the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help." For a long moment there was silence on the other end. Then another voice, soft and disbelieving, answered, "You came. You actually came." That moment was powerful. Even the hardened soldiers standing at their stations felt their throats tighten. For the first time in history, two species that had never met before connected through pure empathy. The command deck grew busy. Orders went out to prepare landing teams, medical crews, and defensive formations. Drone scouts were launched ahead to map enemy movements. The human fleet knew that helping the Thalren meant facing the Varkal directly. It wouldn't be easy, but there was no hesitation. Humanity had made a promise, and they would keep it. On the Thalren world below, word spread quickly. The humans had arrived. People came out of shelters looking up at the dark sky. Through the clouds, they saw streaks of light descending, human rescue shuttles entering the atmosphere. The ground trembled slightly as ships broke through, their engines glowing bright against the smoke-filled horizon. For the first time in months, the people of Thalren felt something they had forgotten: hope. In the orbit above, the human fleet moved into formation. The commander watched the planet slowly turning below and gave the first combat directive: protect the civilians. Neutralize the Varkal ships. No unnecessary destruction. We are here to save lives. The officers nodded. Engines flared to life. The Deathworlders were ready. In that moment, the galaxy changed forever. Humanity had crossed a line no one expected them to cross. Not for power or conquest, but for compassion. Far from home, surrounded by danger, they were about to prove what it truly meant to be human. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Thalren star system, like a silent storm. Thousands of ships shimmered into existence, their engines leaving trails of blue light in the endless dark. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The soldiers, engineers, and medics aboard those ships looked at the screens before them, realizing what they had come so far to face. The Thalren homeworld was right there, burning, broken, and surrounded by enemy warships. Inside the command center of the lead ship, the crew worked with calm precision. Every display showed the same grim picture: dozens of massive Varkal cruisers in orbit bombarding the planet below. The Thalren had no space defenses left. Their satellites were destroyed, their communication networks gone. It was a massacre happening in real time. But now, for the first time since the attack began, there was someone in orbit who could fight back. The fleet commander stood quietly for a moment, watching the data scroll across the screen. Then he gave the order everyone had been waiting for: engage at will. Protect the planet. No hesitation. Across the fleet, battle stations came alive. The great ships of Earth began to move. Heavy cruisers took formation on the front line, while carriers deployed fighter wings in swarms of silver light. The void between worlds turned into a field of moving stars as the Deathworlders advanced. The first contact was brutal and fast. A Varkal dreadnought opened fire, unleashing plasma bursts the size of city blocks. The human shields flared white, absorbing the first hits, and then the response came. The Resolute fired its main cannon, a beam of concentrated energy that tore through the enemy ship's armor and split it apart in a silent explosion. The debris scattered like dust against the dark. Inside the human ships, the crews moved with practiced precision. Pilots maneuvered through debris fields, engineers rerouted power, and gunners tracked targets. It wasn't chaos, it was focus. Each person knew that every decision mattered. Every action could mean life or death for those on the planet below. While the battle raged in orbit, the second phase of the mission began. Dozens of transport and rescue ships broke away from the main formation, diving toward the planet's atmosphere. Their mission was not to fight but to save. They carried food, medicine, shelters, and emergency field hospitals designed for alien life. Medics checked their equipment again and again, hearts pounding as the ships rattled from turbulence and shock waves above. Through thick smoke and broken clouds, the first rescue crafts landed near what remained of a Thalren city. The ground was covered in ash and wreckage. Strange alien architecture lay in ruins, towers cracked open like hollow bones. But amid the devastation there were survivors, thin, frightened figures with glowing eyes watching from behind fallen walls. At first, the Thalren didn't move. They had never seen humans before. The legends they'd heard called them Deathworlders, creatures from a violent planet born among storms and predators. To them, humans were myths, beings to be feared. But when they saw the humans stepping out of their ships, not with weapons raised but with open hands and medical gear, something changed. The fear began to fade. One of the human medics stepped forward slowly, scanning the area. The translation devices projected soft, clear words in the Thalren language. "We are here to help. You are safe now." The aliens hesitated, then one of them, a child, took a step forward. The medic knelt and offered a small container of clean water. That simple act broke the silence. Others began to emerge from the shadows, injured, weak, but alive. The rescue team quickly set up portable hospitals, filtered the air, and began treating wounds. Above them, the battle continued. The sky burned as human and Varkal ships exchanged fire. The sound of distant explosions echoed like thunder. Yet on the ground, for the first time in months, there was hope. Human engineers worked beside Thalren survivors to stabilize what was left of their energy grid. They used portable generators to bring light back to the underground shelters. For many Thalren children, it was the first time they had seen electric light since the invasion began. They stared at the glowing panels in wonder, whispering that maybe the humans truly were protectors, not monsters. The communication teams managed to link with the Thalren leaders, still hidden in the mountains. Their transmission was weak, full of static, but the message was clear. "We didn't think anyone would come. You saved us," the human commander replied firmly. "We heard your call. We won't leave you." In orbit, the tide of the battle began to turn. The Varkal were powerful, but they had never faced humans before. The Deathworlders fought with strategies that no one else in the galaxy used. They adapted instantly, using debris as cover and redirecting weapon fire through gravitational currents. Their ships were smaller than the Varkals, but faster and more precise. The human pilots didn't just fight, they hunted. When one of the Varkal flagships tried to retreat, the humans didn't pursue. Instead, they positioned themselves between the enemy and the planet, creating a protective shield wall. The message was clear: you will not touch this world again. Down on the surface, the Thalren looked up through the smoke-filled sky. They could see faint flashes of light above, each one a sign that someone was fighting for them. Some wept openly, others whispered prayers in their language, words of gratitude to beings they once feared. In one of the shelters, an elder Thalren spoke softly to the younger ones. "They come from a world that even nature tried to destroy," she said. "And yet they fight to protect others. Maybe that is what true strength looks like." As the hours passed, the humans secured more landing zones. Food stations were set up and clean water began flowing again. The smell of burned metal and dust still filled the air, but there was a new sound now, the quiet hum of human machinery rebuilding what had been lost. On the Resolute, the commander received updates from every team. Thousands of lives had been saved, but the mission wasn't over. The Varkal still had ships hiding in nearby asteroid fields, preparing for another assault. The humans knew they couldn't stay defensive forever. They needed to end the threat completely. Before planning the next move, the commander ordered a moment of silence for those who had already fallen. The crew stood at their stations, heads bowed, while the stars outside shimmered quietly. It wasn't just a military act, it was a human one. Every life mattered. Every sacrifice was remembered. Afterward, the commander looked out at the distant planet below. It was scarred, but still alive. Against all odds, the Thalren still had a home to fight for. And humanity had proven something to the galaxy. That compassion and courage could come from the same hands that once wielded war. Night fell on the Thalren world, and for the first time since the invasion began, it was calm. The fires in the sky had faded. The human ships hovered quietly above, forming a shield of light around the planet. In the shelters below, Thalren families slept in safety, guarded by strangers from a faraway blue world they had never known existed until now. High above, on the deck of the Resolute, the stars reflected on the glass panels like distant candles. The crew members looked out into the dark, knowing the fight wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt winnable. In the stillness of space, one thought united everyone aboard the fleet and everyone on the ground. They had answered the call and they would not fail. The Deathworlders had come, and they would not leave until the innocent were safe. The human fleet floated in orbit above the Thalren homeworld, silent and still for a moment after the battle. Below them, the planet was scarred but alive. Smoke rose from broken cities, rivers glowed with reflected firelight, and patches of dark land showed where forest once stood. But among all that destruction, there was also something new: hope. The humans had come through the firestorm and proven that the Thalren were not alone. Inside the command deck of the Resolute, the air was filled with quiet determination. Technicians worked at their consoles, tracking enemy signals and scanning for any remaining Varkal ships hiding in the system. Engineers monitored the fleet's shields and engines, while medics coordinated with ground teams below to report rescued survivors. There was no cheering, no victory celebration, only focus. The mission wasn't over. Reports came in from surface teams. The Thalren were beginning to trust the humans fully now. They had seen how the Deathworlders fought, not to destroy but to protect. Many Thalren had started helping the humans rebuild shelters, bringing out what resources they had hidden underground. The humans worked beside them day and night, fixing power grids, clearing debris, and delivering food packs to refugee zones. Even without understanding each other's languages completely, they communicated through action. But the humans knew it couldn't last long. The Varkal weren't gone. Their main fleet had retreated, but they were regrouping somewhere beyond the nearby moons. The humans expected them to return soon. Every hour counted. The fleet commander gathered his officers for a briefing. The room was dimly lit, the holographic map of the system glowing in the center. Red markers showed the possible routes the Varkal could use to re-enter the system. "They'll come back stronger," the commander said quietly. "They never leave unfinished work. But this time they won't find an easy target." The strategy was clear. The humans would set up a defensive perimeter in orbit, while also preparing to counterattack if needed. They deployed sensor drones in all directions to detect enemy movement. Repair teams worked on damaged ships while engineers modified smaller crafts into fast-response fighters. Every part of the fleet was alive with activity. Meanwhile, on the planet, the human ground teams were beginning to see the emotional toll of what the Thalren had suffered. Entire families had been separated. Thousands were missing. Many refused to believe they were safe yet, afraid that the sky would rain fire again at any moment. One human medic sat near a group of Thalren children, gently tending to their wounds. The translator beside her spoke the alien words slowly, assuring them that the humans were there to protect them. The children didn't answer at first. They just stared at her strange face, her eyes so different from theirs. But when she offered them a ration bar and smiled softly, one of the children smiled back. That small, fragile moment carried more meaning than any speech. In another part of the camp, engineers used portable power cores to light up the ruins of a city block. The once dark streets began to glow with white light again. The Thalren survivors gathered around, whispering in disbelief. For months they had lived in total darkness. Now, for the first time, they could see their homes illuminated. One of the human technicians looked up and said quietly, "We can fix this. We can give them their world back." High above, the humans on the Resolute continued to watch over the planet. Long-range scanners suddenly detected movement, small energy spikes in deep space. The Varkal were coming back. They had regrouped, and this time, they were bringing reinforcements. The human crew knew this would be the real test. The commander gave the alert. All ships, battle stations, prepare for contact. The lights dimmed red across every corridor. Pilots rushed to their fighters. Mechanics sealed hangar doors, and the communications team sent coded warnings to the ground. On the planet, the human rescue teams guided the Thalren back to their shelters. They could already see flashes of light in the sky as the new battle began far above them. The Varkal ships emerged from hyperspace in waves, dozens of them, larger and heavier than before. Their engines burned red, and their weapons charged with energy. They expected an easy victory this time, but the humans were waiting. The first strike came from the Resolute. Its main cannon fired a blast that cut across the darkness and hit the lead enemy cruiser, tearing through its shields in seconds. Then the smaller human ships joined in, surrounding the Varkal fleet from multiple directions. The Deathworlders fought like no one else in the galaxy. Their movements were unpredictable, their tactics fast and relentless. Every human ship worked as part of a single living network. When one was hit, others shielded it. When one went silent, rescue pods were launched immediately. Above the Thalren world, the battle burned like a second sun. On the ground, the people could only watch. The sky was filled with streaks of light, each flash a sign of the struggle above. The Thalren elders held each other, praying that the humans would survive. They knew that if the humans fell, their entire race would be finished. Inside the human ships, the crew fought through exhaustion. The noise of alarms mixed with the shouts of officers and the hum of weapons charging. Damage reports came in constantly. Hull breaches, overheating engines, shield failures, but no one stopped. They had come too far to give up now. The commander stood firm, giving orders calmly even as the ship shook from nearby explosions. "Hold the line," he said. "They cannot pass." The Varkal pushed hard, but they couldn't match human determination. Slowly, the tide began to turn again. One by one, the enemy ships fell silent. The Deathworlders fought with a kind of power that came from something deeper than anger. It came from purpose. After hours of fighting, the last Varkal cruiser tried to flee. But the humans didn't chase it. They let it go, knowing it carried a message. Humanity protects. The Varkal had learned that lesson the hard way. When the battle finally ended, silence filled the fleet once again. The stars shimmered softly, as if the universe itself was taking a breath. Damaged ships floated quietly in formation. The wounded were brought to the medical bays. Some humans had given their lives in the fight, and their sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone. On the planet, the people looked up and saw the sky clear again. The humans had done it. The invaders were gone. The next few days were filled with quiet work. Rescue teams continued helping survivors, building communication towers and setting up long-term supply chains. Human and Thalren engineers began working together, exchanging ideas and knowledge. The aliens were fascinated by how humans could create so much out of so little, while the humans were amazed by the Thalren's peaceful technology. At night, under the dim glow of the planet's two suns, both species would gather near campfires, sharing translated stories through the machines. The Thalren spoke of the time before the war, of music that echoed through their crystal cities, of oceans that glowed at night. The humans listened quietly, their faces reflecting sadness and understanding. They knew what it was like to lose a world, to watch something beautiful get destroyed. In those moments, the difference between them disappeared. They were just people, two races who had suffered, who had fought, and who were now beginning to heal together. From orbit, the Resolute watched over them like a guardian. The commander sent one final message to Earth. Mission ongoing. The Thalren have survived. Humanity has done what it was meant to do. Back on the Thalren homeworld, the first sunrise after the battle painted the horizon with gold. The humans stood beside the aliens, watching the light spread over the land. For the first time, the Thalren saw their world without fear. They had survived because someone far away, a species from a dangerous blue planet, had heard their cry and answered. And now, even though the war was not completely over, a new story had begun. One of unity, compassion, and courage. In the silence of space, the human fleet slowly drifted among the stars, engines glowing softly. They had come to save strangers, and in doing so they had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. Not just survivors from a death world, but protectors of life itself. The battle above the Thalren world had ended, but the cost was heavy. The human fleet had succeeded in protecting the planet and its people, but many ships had been damaged, and some brave crew members had given their lives. The silence of space was now filled with the hum of repairs and the quiet whispers of grief. On the surface, the Thalren were beginning to emerge from their shelters, still shaken by months of fear and destruction. Their eyes followed the ships in orbit, watching humans work tirelessly to ensure their safety. The first priority was always the survivors. Human medics moved from camp to camp, tending to the injured and feeding the hungry. Portable field hospitals, designed for alien physiology, were set up quickly. Thalren doctors worked alongside humans, amazed by the precision and speed of their techniques. Even without fully understanding each other's methods, they found a rhythm together. Wounds were treated, infections prevented, and those too weak to walk were carried to safe zones. The humans did not rush, nor did they prioritize their own safety. Every life mattered equally. Engineers and technicians began assessing the damage to the planet's infrastructure. Communication towers, once destroyed by the Varkal, were being rebuilt. Power generators were set up to restore electricity to shelters and emergency facilities. The Thalren had long ago lost access to clean water in many regions, so the humans installed filtration systems capable of purifying even the most contaminated sources. For the Thalren, seeing flowing water again after months of scarcity was almost magical. Children laughed as they drank, splashing each other and marveling at something they had taken for granted before the invasion. Even as the humans helped the Thalren recover, there was a heavy sense of responsibility. The fleet commander reviewed the situation daily, aware that the Varkal might attempt another attack. The surrounding space was carefully monitored for any signs of enemy movement. Scout drones and long-range sensors scanned the nearby asteroid belts and hyperspace lanes. The humans were vigilant, knowing that the Thalren had no way to defend themselves if the Varkal returned. While the humans worked on practical recovery, they also focused on restoring hope. Social and emotional support was as important as medical care. Teams visited shelters to speak with families and children, using translation devices to communicate simple reassurances. Stories were shared of resilience and survival, of how life could continue even after destruction. Some Thalren could not believe that strangers from a faraway world would go to such lengths to help them. Slowly, walls of fear and suspicion began to fall. Among the Thalren, trust was fragile. They had lived under the shadow of fear for months, constantly fleeing from attacks. The humans' presence changed that. Their consistency, their dedication, and their refusal to leave, even when the sky had been empty for so long, proved that help was genuine. A Thalren elder, observing the humans repairing a collapsed building, whispered to a young leader, "Perhaps there are beings in the galaxy who are guided not by fear or greed, but by kindness." For the humans, the work was exhausting but deeply rewarding. Long hours were spent distributing supplies, coordinating transport for those displaced, and repairing equipment. Nights were short. During brief rests, many would look at the sky, watching the stars and thinking of Earth. They knew they were far from home, yet their commitment never wavered. Their presence meant the difference between survival and extinction for thousands of people below. At one point, a large convoy of humans and Thalren survivors moved toward a destroyed city sector. Their goal was to recover any who might still be trapped under rubble. Rescue drones scanned continuously for life signs. Humans and Thalren worked together, lifting debris, stabilizing crumbling walls, and carrying the injured to waiting medical units. The teamwork created bonds that went beyond language and culture. Each human saw the Thalren not as aliens but as fellow beings fighting to live. Despite their success, the humans remained alert. Scouts had detected faint signals from distant Varkal ships. While the main fleet had driven away the majority of enemy forces, these signals suggested that not all the Varkal had retreated. The threat remained, and everyone knew that the safety of the Thalren depended on continued vigilance. Combat teams patrolled strategic orbits while reconnaissance drones continued to monitor surrounding space. Humans had learned to balance assistance with protection, ensuring the Thalren could rebuild without fear of immediate retaliation. As the days passed, The humans and Thalren began to establish systems for longer-term recovery. Freshwater pipelines were extended, temporary housing settlements grew, and medical stations became more permanent. Human engineers shared knowledge of sustainable energy systems that the Thalren could use in the future. They taught how to reinforce structures against attack and natural disasters, how to purify water efficiently, and how to maintain medical technology over time. Children, in particular, began to flourish under the humans' presence. They played in clean, safe areas, learning from humans about small inventions and games that taught problem-solving and teamwork. Many Thalren children had never known peace. Now laughter returned to the streets. The humans quietly encouraged creativity and exploration, understanding that restoring joy was as vital as restoring food and medicine. The humans also worked to bridge the communication gap. Translators were improved, and both species began to learn from one another. Thalren scholars observed human technology, while humans learned about the unique environmental systems of the Thalren planet. These exchanges created mutual respect. Knowledge became a tool not for domination but for collaboration. On the fleet, the commander made daily reports to Earth. Each report included updates on rescue operations, infrastructure repairs, and survivor numbers. Earth's people followed closely, inspired by the courage and dedication of the fleet. Humanity's reach was being tested on a scale that no one had ever imagined, and the result was extraordinary. Humans were showing what it meant to help others not for profit, power, or recognition, but simply because they could. Even as recovery progressed, small victories were celebrated. Entire families reunited, schools reopened, and community gatherings were organized. Humans joined in these celebrations, participating not as rulers or heroes but as helpers and friends. Their quiet humility left a lasting impression on the Thalren. Many began to believe that humans, though feared in legend, were also capable of unprecedented compassion. However, the humans never let their guard down. Nightly patrols scanned the skies and battle drills continued aboard the fleet. They prepared for the possibility that the Varkal could attempt a return attack at any moment. But every day that passed without incident reinforced the confidence of both species. The Thalren began to trust that these visitors were truly there to protect them. One of the most important parts of the mission was emotional support. Human teams created spaces where Thalren could speak openly about their fears and trauma. Children were encouraged to express themselves through art and games. Survivors told stories about life before the invasion, sharing memories that were bittersweet but necessary for healing. The humans listened, offering comfort, and in the process, both species grew closer. As the first month after the battle ended, the Thalren homeworld began to feel alive again. Streets that were once silent were now filled with cautious activity. Markets reopened, albeit in small forms, as people began trading essentials. Communities started rebuilding, and for the first time, the Thalren dared to dream about a future. Humans remained present, not imposing their culture but helping create conditions where the Thalren could thrive again. The fleet commander held a quiet meeting with his senior officers. They reviewed the progress of the planet's recovery and the status of the fleet. While the mission was not yet complete, the overall situation was improving. Supplies had stabilized, more survivors had been rescued, and morale among both species was rising. The commander spoke simply. "This is what we came to do. We are giving them a chance to live. Every day, every effort makes a difference." Even on the outskirts of the planet where destruction had been greatest, human teams continued their work. They rebuilt shelters, cleared debris, and planted temporary food supplies. The Thalren joined in as much as they could, eager to contribute to their own survival. Together, they were not just repairing a planet, they were repairing lives and hope. In quiet moments, humans and Thalren would sit together under the twin suns, sharing stories and observing the changes around them. The air smelled of ash and rain, but also of something new, possibility. Children played among the rebuilt shelters, laughter echoing over fields that had once been battle zones. Adults worked side by side, learning from each other. Bonds formed not from obligation, but from mutual respect and gratitude. The human fleet remained in orbit, a silent watchtower of protection and hope. Drones patrolled the skies, ensuring that no hidden threats approached. Engineers constantly repaired ships and upgraded systems. Humans understood that their presence was more than military might. It was a symbol. The Thalren needed to know that help could last, and the humans were determined to provide it. By the end of the 5th week, the Thalren homeworld had changed. Fires were extinguished, water was flowing, and families were reunited. Streets that had once been ghostly were now filled with cautious movement. Children ran freely for the first time in months, and everywhere humans worked quietly, teaching, rebuilding, and caring. The Thalren had learned something invaluable. They were not alone in the universe. They had seen beings from another world risk everything for their survival. And the humans had learned, too, that courage is not just in battle but in compassion, in patience, and in the quiet acts that allow life to continue after destruction. The fleet commander looked down at the planet below from his observation deck. For months, the Thalren had lived in fear. Now slowly, hope was returning. The humans had given them a second chance, not through domination but through understanding, care, and action. The mission had shown that humanity could reach across the stars not only to fight, but to heal, protect, and inspire. In the weeks ahead, the focus would shift from immediate rescue to long-term recovery. But one thing was clear. The bond between humans and Thalren had been forged in fire and hope. They had survived the worst, and together they were beginning to build a future. Even in the quiet moments when stars shone softly above and the twin suns dipped below the horizon, the message was clear. Humanity had answered a call for help, and through their courage and care, an entire civilization had been given a chance to live again. The Thalren homeworld, once a place of terror and destruction, was slowly beginning to breathe again. Fires had been extinguished, the smoke cleared from the skies, and the chaos that had gripped their cities for months was giving way to cautious rebuilding. Yet the memory of the Varkal attacks lingered heavily in every corner. Children still flinched at loud noises. Families avoided certain streets, and elders whispered about the horrors they had witnessed. But amid the ruins, hope was alive, carried on the tireless efforts of the human fleet that had answered the desperate call for help. On the surface, human teams worked tirelessly alongside Thalren engineers and volunteers. The collaboration was remarkable. Humans taught the aliens to repair critical infrastructure quickly, from water filtration systems to temporary power grids. In turn, the Thalren shared their own knowledge of the planet, how to navigate the treacherous terrain, purify the air in hazardous zones, and avoid pockets of lingering radiation from damaged energy grids. Together, they moved methodically through the ruined cities, ensuring that each area received attention, whether it was a collapsed building, a destroyed bridge, or a damaged communication tower. The humans understood the importance of more than just physical repair. Emotional recovery was just as vital. Teams of human medics and counselors worked with Thalren families, helping them process the trauma of months of fear and loss. They taught techniques to manage anxiety, guided children through exercises to rebuild confidence, and even organized small community gatherings where families could begin to interact safely with one another. Slowly, the Thalren started to trust again. They began to step outside their shelters, rebuild homes, and return to routines that had been impossible under the shadow of the Varkal. Across the planet, schools were among the first places to be restored. Human educators worked with Thalren teachers to set up temporary learning centers. Here, children who had spent months hiding in bunkers could finally engage with their peers, play, and learn. Even in the most devastated areas, classrooms were improvised using tents and modular structures, with simple furniture and learning materials provided by the humans. The laughter of children running through hallways or drawing pictures of their new hopes became a powerful symbol of life returning. The human fleet remained in orbit, vigilant and prepared for any sign of the Varkal returning. Long-range sensors scanned the surrounding space constantly, monitoring for enemy movements. While no attacks came, the humans remained alert, knowing that even one unnoticed ship could bring disaster back to the planet below. Patrols flew over strategic locations, providing both protection and reassurance. Their presence above the planet became a symbol of security and hope, a quiet reminder to the Thalren that they were not alone. Supply chains were established quickly to ensure that the people had enough food, water, and medical supplies. The humans built temporary farms using hydroponic systems and automated irrigation, providing fresh food even as the Thalren's own agricultural areas were still recovering. Medical stations were equipped with everything from emergency surgical tools to simple first aid supplies. allowing the humans and Thalren doctors to treat injuries and prevent disease outbreaks. Every day, more survivors were able to leave hiding and return to active roles in their communities. Amid the rebuilding, human engineers and Thalren scientists worked on long-term improvements to the planet's infrastructure. They reinforced buildings to withstand natural disasters, upgraded power grids to be more resilient, and developed communication networks that could survive future attacks. The goal was not only to repair what had been destroyed, but to ensure that the Thalren civilization could thrive and endure in ways that had previously seemed impossible. One of the most remarkable aspects of the recovery was the bond forming between the humans and the Thalren. Both species learned from each other, shared skills, and communicated beyond words through action and trust. Human medics learned how to treat alien physiology in ways they had never encountered, while Thalren engineers adapted human technology to their unique environment. Small acts of kindness, offering water, helping someone carry supplies, sharing a meal, built a connection that transcended language, culture, and species. The Thalren began to share their own stories, recounting life before the Varkal invasion, the music that once filled their cities, the beauty of their crystal towers, the calm of their oceans under twin suns. Humans listened, offering understanding and empathy, recognizing the universal feelings of loss and hope that spanned across species. Even simple interactions like teaching a child to play a human game or explaining a repair technique became moments of connection and trust. Nightfall brought moments of reflection. The humans often gathered on elevated platforms or observation decks, looking down on the planet and across the star-filled sky. They had come to save a species they had never met, risking their own lives for the sake of strangers, and now they were witnessing the beginnings of a civilization rising from the ashes. There was quiet pride, but also a deep understanding of the responsibility they carried. Every life saved, every system repaired, and every child given hope was a testament to the choice humanity had made. To act, not out of power or conquest, but out of empathy and courage. As weeks turned into months, the Thalren homeworld began to feel more alive. Markets reopened, modest at first, but growing steadily as trade resumed. Streets were cleared, buildings repaired, and families reunited. Children played freely, and adults engaged in reconstruction efforts guided by human expertise. The planet's atmosphere seemed lighter, the air filled with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and cautious optimism. The humans continued to train Thalren teams in emergency response, ensuring that the planet could defend itself against future threats. They installed early warning systems and taught coordinated evacuation procedures, sharing knowledge that would allow the Thalren to protect themselves without direct human intervention. It was a partnership rather than control, a collaboration built on mutual respect and necessity. Celebrations began to emerge, small at first, then larger as the Thalren realized they were no longer living under constant threat. Humans participated not as conquerors or outsiders, but as allies and friends. Music, food, and stories filled the spaces where fear had once been dominant. The human presence had transformed the planet not just physically, but emotionally, giving its people a renewed sense of community and identity. In orbit, the fleet maintained its protective position, but crews also began planning for the next phase of the mission. Supplies continued to flow, medical teams rotated to prevent exhaustion, and engineers ensured all ships remained in top condition. Every human understood that the Thalren's survival depended on sustained effort, not just the initial rescue. They were committed for the long haul. Throughout the planet, small victories accumulated into meaningful progress. Entire neighborhoods once reduced to rubble now stood rebuilt, powered by human ingenuity and Thalren collaboration. Schools and hospitals functioned efficiently, and local governance structures began to re-establish order. Even cultural traditions that had been suppressed during the invasion were slowly returning, encouraged by human support for celebration and community. The bond between the two species deepened daily. Thalren leaders invited humans to their councils, sharing perspectives on reconstruction priorities. Children of both species learned together, exploring science, engineering, and art in joint programs. Trust solidified into friendship and friendship into respect. Humans had arrived as strangers from a distant world, but they were leaving a lasting impression that would carry through generations. Even in moments of quiet, The Thalren expressed their gratitude in subtle ways: gifts, shared meals, or simply working alongside the humans without prompt. Every act of cooperation was a reminder that their survival was not accidental, but the result of deliberate, compassionate action. Humans had proven that their reputation as Deathworlders did not define them. Their choices did. Finally, the commander of the fleet looked out across the restored cities from the deck of the Resolute. The planet had changed, but it was alive. Fires were out, water flowed, children laughed, and families reunited. The human fleet had achieved more than survival. They had given a civilization a second chance. Reports were sent back to Earth, detailing the progress of reconstruction, the number of lives saved, and the success of collaborative systems with the Thalren. Earth's people celebrated quietly but proudly, knowing that humanity had shown its greatest strength, not in battle alone, but in courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when others could not. As the twin suns of the Thalren homeworld set, casting long golden shadows across rebuilt streets and fields, humans and Thalren alike paused to reflect. The months of fear, destruction, and struggle had not vanished, but they had been replaced by hope, determination, and a sense of shared destiny. Humanity had answered the call, not for fame or glory, but because it was the right thing to do. And in doing so, they had shown that even across the vast expanse of space, compassion could be a force stronger than any weapon. The future remained uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time, the Thalren looked forward to tomorrow without dread. They had survived, rebuilt, and learned that they were not alone. Humanity had come, stayed, and acted not as conquerors but as protectors. And as the stars sparkled overhead, it became clear that a new chapter had begun. A chapter of cooperation, resilience, and the enduring power of hope.